going to talk about elbow, and we're going to talk about wrist and forearm today. But first, I want to kind of go over the neck stuff and see if you guys found any limitations in your actual structure. So like a lot of people who play the violin, the guitar, the viola, they end up having difficulty kind of coming back and over to the right. They will find that it's super easy for them to come this way because all these muscles have kind of shortened and gotten tight, so that when they have to come back this way, it's kind of harder. So their natural resting position tends to be to the left. So I know for me with flute, it's kind of the same way. I kind of still tend to want to head to the left, even though I haven't played my instrument for years and years and years. My tendency is to still go to the left because when I would play, I would do this. All right. When I had all of my injuries years and years and years ago, one of the big things that I had was shoulder issues. Everything was on my right side. So it's kind of interesting that I would be looking to the left, but all of my symptoms were radiating down into my right. So I had a lot of shoulder issues to the point where my shoulder was just killing me all the time. My upper trap was engaged constantly. My shoulder was forward. I was kind of in the forward posture all the time, which again, you can't move very well when you're in that forward posture. So, hey Matthew, how are you? Hey Natasha. Matthew, if you feel like commenting, that would be awesome, and just let me know what instrument you are, so I can talk more specifically to that as well. So if anybody has questions about the neck and the shoulder, please comment below, and I will respond to those. But I'm really curious to just know if you found any limitations in your actual motion, and then what position you tend to be at your instrument. Are you really one side in one direction? Do you kind of come back and forth? I have a viola player who actually is really good at changing her neck position back and forth a little bit. She's kind of gotten good with that over time, so she's not constantly into that position. You know, with guitar, you know, a lot of people end up having to, they stare at the neck of their instrument all the time when they really don't need to. They really, you know, once you've been playing for long enough, you can feel a lot of it. You go back and forth, you feel back and forth, kind of go back and forth. Again, it's all that whole point of coming out of the deforming position that we put ourselves in, so we don't get long-term structural changes, and so that we can be balanced, because it's all about having really good posture when we're away from our instrument, so that when we come to our instrument, we are in as good a posture as we possibly can be biomechanically in our body, and then also at our instrument. And then when we have to go into those deforming positions, we then come out of them as quickly as we can while we're playing. And then when we're done playing, work into the opposite extremes that our instrument puts us in. So today I'm going to talk about elbow, forearm, and wrist. So this is where I had a ton of my problems, again, all on the right side. But our elbow actually just goes up and it just goes down. I need a step stool because my camera, if I put it the other way, it doesn't work for the live. But our elbow kind of comes up and it kind of comes down. Now, when we look at our elbow, sometimes it looks like when we go in this position, this looks like it's actually coming from our elbow. That's not. That's actually coming from our shoulder. And we had talked about those positions last week, which was like that external rotation and that internal rotation. So it looks like an elbow motion, but it's actually not. Our elbow really just goes up and it goes down. And for most instruments, it's up a lot. A lot of instruments that require the bow, so, you know, violin, viola, cello, double bass. A lot of people end up with tennis elbow because of the way that they're bowing. And I've had some patients that are very kind of aggressive on their bow changes. So when they down bow and up bow, they're very aggressive in terms of snapping back and forth. So that once they kind of smooth that out a little bit, some of their elbow pain goes away. So that's one of the areas that tends to get bothered. And it's usually right around and through here. So the muscles on this side of our forearm actually extend our wrist. And then the muscles on this side of our forearm actually flex our wrist and our fingers. So extension is on this side of our wrist and our fingers, and flexion is on this side of our wrist and our fingers. Then obviously we have our elbow flexors here, and then our triceps, which extend our elbow. So it's important that all that be balanced. And sometimes what happens is that if they're working against each other and we are kind of contracting both at the same time, that they're not quite sure which way to go, and it kind of creates a tug of war. And a lot of times that can happen out of just a bad habit and tension and stress because we're not really sure, so we're kind of in this position. So again, it's the energy in which we approach our instrument at as well. But common injuries at the elbow are that kind of tennis elbow, the golfer's elbow, which I always find those names really funny because in 21 years, it's almost 21 years of practicing, there's very few people that end up with tennis elbow that actually play tennis, and very few people that have golfer's elbow that play golf. So it's kind of funny. I mean, there are some, but not all. So it's just it's just an irritation of those tendons in through here, and it can be from varying different things. So your elbow is kind of boring, just 2 movements, that's it. So just kind of take your elbow through that range. Can you get all the way straight? And can you get all the way bent? Now, there may be some of you that have what's called hyperextension at your elbow, where it actually kind of goes up. I am not hyperextensible at my elbow, but I've had people that really can come up this way, and that causes issues in and of itself. And I'm hoping to bring a friend of mine on who is a physical therapist who has really loosey-goosey joints. She's a swimmer, she's a triathlete, she's very, very active, but her joints, she can actually sublux her joints. And it's crazy. So she works super hard to kind of stabilize her body. So a lot of musicians are actually very hypermobile. So that's an area to consider as well, because if your ligaments are really loose and you have that hypermobility, your muscles have to work even harder to stabilize your joints. So that's one thing we just need to think about. The other motion, so elbow boring, up and down, right? That's all pretty basic. Your forearm actually rotates palm down and palm up. So standing here, what you can see is, let me just gonna move the camera down a little bit so you can see his elbow, okay? So you actually have 2 bones in your forearm, all right? You have your radius, which is on your thumb side. This is his thumb here, all right? And then you have your ulna over here, all right? So this is in the palm up position. What happens when we turn palm down is our radius, that big bone, rotates over our ulna, okay? The other thing that happens with this palm down is that our ulna actually migrates down a little bit closer to the little bones in our hand. Sorry if I'm wobbling here. All right, so this is important because many instruments require us to be palm down, okay? Especially on the right side. And the reason this is important is because if we over-rotate, we tweak over and through here, okay? So the forearm does palm up and then palm down because that one bone crosses over the other. So this little spot down here, I'll put it up here if you can see it better, right here, it's on your little finger side, is a really common injury site for musicians, really common. All right, this was one of my issues. And in that spot over here on your wrist, you can see Stanley here. Poor guy, it's all bolted in together. There is a whole complex in through here. And there's a little piece of cartilage in through here, and it's a bunch of different complexes. There's a ligament, there's a couple tendons that come across. But you can get a tear in this little cartilage, and that's one of the things that I had. And it's super irritating. There are some people that actually have a longer ulna anatomically. That's just how they're made. So that when you come down into that palm down position, it smushes down even further into those little bones into your wrist. All right, hey Spencer, how are you? Hey Kurt, how are you? Stanley's gonna wave. When it pops up with your name, it says wave. Like, I guess I could hit a button that says wave. So Stanley's waving. So that's one of those areas in your wrist that's really, really troublesome. I actually had a clarinetist a couple weeks actually she was about a month ago or so, and she had pain in the side of her wrist. All right, and it was because of how she was holding her instrument, and she was deviating back and forth and kind of rotating back and forth just a little bit too much as she was shifting. And as soon as she stopped doing that, because she didn't have to actually do that, she didn't actually have to do that motion. As soon as she stopped doing that, her wrist pain actually went away, which was huge. And then we had to tweak and kind of work on her muscles because they had been in spasm because of the way that she had been playing for a little while. So it's just, and it come to find out she actually had an anatomical issue that her ulna was a little bit longer. So that made her more prone to having wrist pain in that area. So that is one of those things that you just kind of want to watch. If you're over rotating like this, so if you just take your arm and you over rotate it, you can feel the strain and the pull in through here. All right. So and it doesn't matter what position that you're in. So if you are at, and you're I just drew a blank in terms of what instrument, but if you're pulling your wrist and you're kind of coming around and you're rotating in, right, you can feel a pull in there. And then if you kind of come down that way, you can just imagine how everything's sort of being squished together. And if you stay in that position for too long, that little structure in there and that little piece of cartilage is going to get a little cranky. All right. So this was one of my issues when I played my instrument. I was in wrist extension, but I had a lot of pressure coming from my little finger because I couldn't keep my little finger bent. All right. And then I was also working a computer and I was doing this all day with my stupid mouse in between all my practicing. So I ended up with a tear of that cartilage that was down there. And that's super painful and takes a really long time to heal. So if I had known better postures back then and better ergonomics back then, I could have avoided that issue altogether, right? So there's all these different things that we can avoid. The palm up position is not so bad, except for if you over rotate your palm up position, you're going to feel a pull over and through here, all right? And then there's different muscles that do that palm up, palm down that can then get tight or overstretched, depending on if we're in a position for too long. So if we're in palm down for a long time, your palm down muscles are actually getting overstretched and your palm up muscles are getting too tight. So it's a matter of making sure that you know which muscles you need to stretch and which muscles you need to strengthen, and trying to tweak yourself at your instrument. So when you're watching, a lot of the times guitar players will be on their instrument and wrist will be bent in a little bit and they'll be down into this position, okay? Now if they stay there, that's not so good because that's a long time being in that position, all right? Whereas if they can come down when they need to and then come back out of it, that's a perfect thing, all right? Because again, you're gonna have to come into funky positions, but when you can come out of them, that's the best thing that you can do. So your wrist positions that they do are wrist back. So just to assess your motion, take your wrist and bring your wrist back as far as you can go. See how they look compared to each other. All right, do they look pretty good? Do they feel good? Do they feel tight? All right. Do you feel a stretch in your forearm down through here when you do that? Is one more like this? Are they both like this? Kind of want to compare them to each other. There are certain norms with range of motion, but the norm for everybody is not necessarily the norm for you, all right? So you always want to look at both sides. And then your wrists bend down into what we call flexion. All right, now what you will notice is when you come up and you make a fist, I'm going to turn my hand this way so you'll see it more. I make my fist. When I bend my wrist down, see how my index finger pulls out? That's normal, right? The reason why that's normal is because I'm stretching these muscles all along the back because I made a fist, and now I'm bending my wrist all the way down, which stretches and it wants to pull out. You're not meant to complete a full fist with your wrist bent down, all right? But when you test your motion, bend down and see how does it feel. You can do it with a fist and then also without a fist. And the reason there's a difference is because, again, you're stretching your tendon more when you're in a fist And you're stretching all these guys on the back versus without a fist. So check your motion. How much motion do you have? And does it feel good? Is there any pain anywhere in there when you're doing that? All right. The other motions that your wrists do are they turn in towards your little finger, which if you care is called ulnar deviation. It's going towards your ulna, your little finger side. All right. And then radial deviation. So how do those look? How much motion do you have with those? I'm going to do it this way too. So radial deviation, sorry. And then ulnar deviation. Let me go back. So it's like the windshield wiper, right? So here's just a tip. If you're using a mouse, do not use a mouse this way. All right, where's my mouse? Getting a little off content here, but don't go back and forth with your mouse this way. All right. You always want to use your arm to go back and forth. That was one of my downfalls. Hey, Gary. Hey, Elia. How are you? I'm so excited. People are on and watching. How is England, my dear? Oh, my goodness. It looks amazing. I've seen your pictures. I'm so excited for you. In school over there learning. What a great experience. So, forearm motion is palm up. I just want you to feel how your forearms feel when you do palm up. Do they feel limber? Do they feel like you have full range of motion? They should be pretty parallel to the ceiling. That's fairly normal range of motion. Does it feel like it's pulling anywhere? And then palm down. Again, same thing. Does it hurt anywhere? Does it feel like you can get pretty parallel to the floor? Right? Because it should. All right, you should be able to get pretty parallel to the floor with your elbows in at your side. Now, if you want to cheat, you can do this, right? But elbows in at your side, and then palms up. Okay, and then wrists, you want to just assess this position down without a fist, this position down with a fist, and then wrist back. Okay, and you can do wrist back with a fist as well. Right, and then radial deviation. How's that feel? And then ulnar deviation. So what I want you to do is take your instrument. So last week you took your instrument, you assessed your range of motion in your neck, you assessed your range of motion in your shoulder. I gave you guys the PDFs on there to kind of just to see where you should be and what motions are actually what. And then you were supposed to take your instrument, hold it just in the ready to play position and see what position are you in? What position was your neck in? Were you bent to the side? How far to the side were you bent? Were you rotated? How far were you rotated? Do you need to be that far rotated? Because the best positions for us to be in are more neutral positions. So when our neck is straight, that's a more neutral position. That's our posture position that our body likes to be in, right? It doesn't like to be bent to the side and turned all the time, because then this gets out of alignment, this gets tight, this gets lengthened, okay? So you need to come back and fix all that. So same thing with the shoulder. Were your shoulders raising up? Were they coming forward? Are you rotated in all the time in that internal rotation? How high up is your shoulder when you're playing? Are you pinching in here? How did those positions feel when you were at the ready to play your instrument? Okay. And are there any little tweaks that you could do? Do you need to be that high up? Can you come down a little bit? The key is that when you make technique changes in your body positioning, you have to make sure that you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because when you change it, if you bring your shoulder down a little bit, it's going to change your wrist position, which is going to in turn change your finger position. So again, you want to make sure that everything is fit as well as it can be for your body compared to your instrument. Because again, some fingers are longer, some fingers are shorter, some forearms are longer, some are shorter, some necks are longer, some necks are shorter. So it really depends on your body type in terms of how you actually fit yourself to your instrument, okay? So this week, I want you to do the same thing you did last week with your instrument and look at, okay, what position is my elbow in? Is my elbow bent? All right, is it extended? Is my palm down? Is my palm up? Is my palm too far down? Am I over rotating? All right. And is my wrist bent? Is my wrist extended? Are you overbent? The goal again is to be in a neutral position as much as you can be, okay? Now again, you can't be in that position all the time, especially when we're playing, like, so if you're playing on guitar or violin or viola, your left arm is going to be in palm up, supination we call it, and your right arm is going to be in palm down, okay? So there's nothing you can do about that. That's just the way that it's got to be. That's the position that your forearm needs to be in order to play the instrument. But are you over rotating? Okay, are you going too far? Are you putting too much strain on certain structures in certain joints, right, and certain muscles? Because you don't need to be over. You just need to be in the perfect position for you, okay? And ideally the perfect position for the joint, all right, if we can find a combination of having medium for the two. And then again, a wrist, your wrist needs to come in for certain positions and out. But again, we like to have as much as we can in this nice neutral position, because that's what position makes the body happy, right? So again, you have to move into certain positions and then out of certain positions, all right? And then, for flute, the goal is to always get a more neutral position as much as you can. But I can tell you there are some people that play like this, all right? Very rarely are flute players into flexion. But that's one of the things that, are you squishing to the side too much? Are you coming this way too much? So watch this side of your wrist, this side over here, all right? Everybody see it? That you're not kind of tweaking too far this way or this way when you're turning your palm up, right? But take and see what positions you're putting yourself at your instrument for your elbow, your forearm, and your wrists. First, take yourself through the ranges of motion, see how much motion you have available to you to make sure that you have good mobility in the first place. See how it feels. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? All right. Then take yourself and hold the instrument that you're playing and see how it feels. What position are you in? Does it feel good? All right. So that's your starting position. When you start playing, it's a whole nother ball of wax. But just want you to get an idea of what position are you in and how do these positions feel for you? Because if you're starting off in a kind of junky, not well aligned position, it's only gonna create more junky, malaligned positions as you're actually dynamically playing. So again, the goal is to get in as good of alignment as you can for your instrument and for your body. And the key is just to remember that everybody's body is different. Everybody's body is different. So you really have to fit your body to your instrument and make sure that as you are changing one thing, that everything else is kind of falling into alignment down below or above as well. So I'll put up another PDF for all the different positions of the elbow, forearm, and wrist. And then kind of your assignment, and I just want you to let me know, how does it feel? How do these positions feel? You can even take pictures and post pictures in the feed. That would be awesome. I would love to see that. I'd love to assess people's playing and kind of see what positions that they're at and see if I can give you feedback if there's little tweaks that might be able to be made or just, ideas and from that respect too. And then go from there. So if anybody has any questions, please comment in the feed and I will post those up probably by tomorrow morning. I have to get my model to model for me tonight. Hopefully she'll be willing to do so. I'm going to use Leah today instead of Trevor. And then we'll go from there. All right, so next, I think it's Friday, I'm back on, and we're going to talk about the hand on Friday and the thumb, because those are two big ones. The thumb and the fingers are huge ones, all right? The other thing I really want you to be cautious of is what energy are you approaching your instrument in? And that's really, really, really important. How much stress, how much tension are you using? Do you need to be having as much tension in your body parts? Are you guarding anywhere? Do you kind of raise your shoulders up? Do you kind of bring yourself forward? Pay attention to all those things, because that's just overall body self-awareness. Scan your body for tension, scan your body for, what position you might be putting yourself into that you don't even need to, because those are things that we get into the habit of, and then we don't even realize that we're doing it, all right? I've done that a lot before. All right, so I'm gonna sign off. Stanley's gonna say goodbye with his concussion and his traumatic brain injury now, and I will see you guys on